Board of Commissioners meeting will come to order. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present and accounted for. If you will join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Thank you, members. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. Is there a second?
Persky, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. So we get to move now to our employee years of service recognition. I know we were all hoping we'd be able to do this fully in person by now, and I know we're all very appreciative. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Williams right now, and then after we have our presentation, I know we'll be able to say our thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. We're recognizing 61 employees with anniversaries this morning, and so it's a special day because it's one of the 2 times a year that we take a moment to recognize our employees who serve the residents of our county so well. And as we all know, 2021 continues to be challenging for us all, and through navigating through those challenges, I think we confirmed what we already knew to be true, that Stearns County is full of dedicated, hardworking employees who care about our community, and they know how to get things done. And so, again, we're going to take a moment to honor and recognize those employees who have hit a milestone in their career with the county through this virtual presentation rather than in person. But nevertheless, our appreciation is the same, even though we can't do it in person. So just take a few minutes and watch the PowerPoint presentation that our staff has prepared to honor our employees. So again, thanks to all our employees, particularly the ones hitting the milestones, as you know that they help carry out our mission and our values every day. And that means providing exceptional public services to assure a safe, healthy, vibrant county for all. And of course, we couldn't do it with all these fine folks. So back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mike. It is amazing just to think about the array of people who it takes to deliver on our mission and really to deliver our exceptional services. And thank you to each person recognized today and those of you who might be between those milestones. And it's hard not to notice that we have a couple of our commissioners that hit milestones too. So thank you as well. But I do think it's great because we see everybody from our sheriff through to folks that people might not see that are visible. And thank you again on behalf of our board. All right, let's move to our next agenda item, which is the Public Access Forum. Is there anyone here wishing to speak today?
Madam Chair, we had nobody online as well.
And I didn't say anybody. We do want to remind and encourage the public, if you wish to address the board on issues not found on a given agenda, you can come and either be in person. You can also attend joining virtually, and just email or contact us ahead of time. You're able to speak on topics once a month, and again, we really do encourage you to do so. Our next item is the consent agenda. Looking for a motion unless somebody has an item they wish to review further.
I'll move to consent agenda.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Notch. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergen. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes. We have a great presentation today, and it's hard to believe that all of you were actually able to make it here in person. Our next item is the Minnesota Intercounty Association. Mike, do you want to say any words beforehand? Otherwise, we'll bring up Matt Mossman, our executive director, and Commissioner Lensmeyer and I get to serve on this board. And just want to say thank you to start off with for the absolute crazy amount of additional work that you've had to do in this past year for all of us. Mr. Mossman.
Good morning, Chair Clark and commissioners. Thank you as well for your membership and long-term commitment to the Minnesota Intercounty Association, and to Commissioner Lensmeyer and Commissioner Clark for your service on our board. And starting with the thank yous, Administrator Williams and his team, as you saw, so many of them here this morning are just providing valuable service in a key county that I go to, I know, throughout the course of the year to get insights into what is happening on the ground so that we can be informed at the legislature and working on your behalf. We're glad to be here this morning. We're a little bit removed from the legislative session. A lot of what has happened, we know that at this point you have likely read in the newspapers. We'll be brief, but this is an opportunity both to highlight many of the things that we championed and also to answer any questions you have. And at this point, we also start turning an eye, or have been for a month or so, a couple months, to next legislative session, as well as monitoring the possibility of a special session here in September. So we will come up. The rest of the MICA team is here with me. I'll just go briefly to the first slide and just say the next slide. Thank you. This do I have a clicker or is someone running for me? Go to slide 2. This just highlights there in the middle, the legislature agreed to bipartisan. First of all, as you all know, we're the only divided party control legislature in the country. So a lot of issues, policy, contentious issues went by the wayside. But in the end of the day, we did have a significant state budget surplus, and the significant amounts of federal money that were coming into the state really smoothed the way to a $52.2 billion 2-year budget, which was a 3.4% increase. Much of that helped to support a number of the county priorities. I do want to point out that I think we provided to you also, we're going to hit some highlights, but there's a 40-plus page summary of the legislative session that we put together. That's both available online, and you may have also been provided a printed copy. If you want a copy and you don't have one, we'd be happy to get that for you. And all of those things are just things that impacted county governments in many ways in your constituents. Tax aids and credits. I want to really highlight, first of all, that there was a new aid program that was put in place. One of the things that we went into this session prioritizing, especially when we thought that there was a deficit, was that we not receive any reductions in county program aid. There was a lot of goodwill built up with the legislature because of the great work that the counties did with the significant CARES Act money that we were able to get distributed to counties last session in that work. And so that really helped protect county program aid and other confidence in the work that county governments do. I point out this $20 million of homeless prevention aid, which is a 6-year pilot program that was put in place that'll start in 2023. It's just a little south of $1 million a year for Stearns County. Stearns County is actually one of the handful of counties in the state that will get more distributed through this aid program, which is based on the number of high schoolers that are reporting to the Department of Education as homeless at some point throughout the year than you would under the county program aid formula, which actually also just speaks to the need that you have in that area. But so it's a significant resource coming to counties to work on those issues. Very broad purposes also. Two things that don't accrue to your budgets, but the county general property tax that's paid by businesses is going to go down by about $20 million annually, and also veterans are going to receive significantly higher renter and homeowner refunds because of a change in the formula there to not count their disability benefit payments. Broadband in particular is something that Mike and his team, among a number of other counties, have provided a tremendous amount of insight into our work at the legislature, as well as, thank you, Commissioner Clark, Administrator Williams, and others for the work that you did to help testify, frankly, and bring the message directly to meetings with legislators. The broadband grant program, as a result, received $70 million of funding. That bounced around quite a bit. That was a key priority for Micah. It was as low as $30 million headed into conference committee in one of the chambers. We were pushing for $120 million over the 2 years, and it landed at $70 million. There's a little bit of a slowdown getting the money, unfortunately, because it was targeted to come from the federal ARP capital projects money has to be applied for, but there's no uncertainty that we will get it. There's a little bit of a timing question. And then I'm just going to end here with a couple things that we're following closely, not so much because they're money coming to the counties, but because they are money coming into efforts to help folks recover from and respond to the COVID pandemic, which for many counties might also factor into the way you're thinking about your ARP funds. There's currently being debated, discussed by a panel of 9 members that were put together by the legislature to come up with recommendations to distribute $250 million in frontline worker pay. As of right now, there's some differences between the House and the Senate and the administration as exactly how to distribute that pay. Some folks want to focus primarily or exclusively on folks in the long-term care industry and the healthcare industry who work directly with COVID patients. Others want to pull in some sort of income base. A lot of frontline workers, obviously, were people in the manufacturing industry, people who were in retail jobs, people who had to go to work daycare centers and that sort of thing, who kept access to all of us getting food and product during closure times also. So that's unresolved yet. It's a key item because the solution needs to be passed by the legislature. So there was an expectation that there would be a September special session to do that. We, of course, were monitoring that because the bonding bill was the other thing that didn't get done last legislative session. And we've been hoping that a bonding bill would surface, although that is a little iffy at this point also. But if there's a special session, we'll be trying to see if a small supplemental bonding bill can be passed that session also. Happy to answer any questions. You'll hear more about that when Mr. Novak talks also. And I'll be back up to wrap up at the end too.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Novak.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Always good to be in Stearns County. Appreciate it. Let me get right to the point in terms of transportation and what occurred here this past, really the past 10 or 11 months, but including, of course, the special session after the regular session in terms of transportation dollars. It was a good cycle for counties, roads and bridges, township roads, local city streets, compared to the last several sessions, maybe going back as far as 20 years. We did receive an additional $14 million for local bridge replacement, which was on top of $30 million that came to us at the end of the fourth special session last fall. Same thing for local roads. We received an additional $5.5 million, which was on top of the $70 million, which was a significant number for local county roads in the special session last October. So combined on about a 20-year line of thought on these subjects, this was significant funding. In addition to that, I know Stearns County has a lot of township roads and small city streets. And there was a pretty big breakthrough in that area with an additional $12 million for township roads, $18 million for small city streets. Just to put that in perspective, also on a 20-year line, that was significant funding, the largest funding we received in those categories really ever. So all combined for county roads and bridges and your intersecting township roads and small city streets, it was a good 12-month cycle for us. We have more than enough projects to utilize that money and many projects still in line for future dollars, which we will continue to chase on your behalf. Another problem that hopefully will be getting solved as a result of this bill is because of the pandemic. I think we're all aware that amongst other things that we're forced to close, a lot of our driver's license exam stations around the state had to close. So they put in $2.6 million each of the next 2 years specifically to reopen all of the driver's license exam stations around Minnesota. So hopefully that will be of large benefit to your constituents and other Minnesotans throughout the state. Let me move to another significant part of the transportation funding bill this past summer. There was $113 million additional money put into trunk highway funding and $30.9 million in general funds for a variety of projects, one of which passes through Stearns County, of course, which was the US Highway 10 study, and that will get that project started. That was all done inside the context of the last couple of years of debate between the Senate chair, transportation chair, Senator Newman, sort of versus MnDOT, sort of versus the DFL House on the issue of earmarks. Should we go back to earmarks? Should we not? Instead, I think we slid back into them with some language changes. Senator Newman likes to call them constituent requests. And there were a number of those that got into the final package. So I will leave it at that, except for questions, and then just briefly reference the fact that Mr. Mossman had touched on, which is the possibility of a bonding bill being part of either a September or October special session, where they're going to continue to examine and come up with formulas on how to spend the federal money that's pending, which then slides into just touching on the subject of the federal bipartisan bill, which has passed the Senate, hopefully will pass the House. I reference that in relationship to transportation because it's now been documented fairly significantly that there will be, very meaningful money coming from that federal bill to Minnesota for roads, bridges, and transit. We're all anxious to get the specifics on that, but it will be meaningful. It will have a major positive impact on the state, and we're looking forward to working with everyone on the implementation of those dollars. Finally, I just want to mention and say thanks for providing to us some real talent in terms of Jody Tyke, your county engineer. I get to work with her a lot. I meet with the engineers every month, year-round, and she provides a lot of leadership in that area, not only for us, obviously for you, but also for a variety of statewide organizations like the Transportation Alliance. So we appreciate that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Persky.
Steve, I just want to say we appreciate the support for the townships. You know, they've really been struggling with limited growth. And so, you know, Western Stearns County has so many small townships, and, you know, that's appreciated. So I just wanted to comment on that.
I think there's a broadening recognition at the legislature over the last decade of how the township roads, city streets intersect with county roads and bridges, and of course our state highway system. We spend a lot of time trying to make sure that legislators know the difference in terms of how they're funded, because you know, the legislature reflects the citizenry, and when an average citizen gets up in the morning to go do whatever they do, go to work, take kids to school, whatever, you know, they're traveling on a variety of roads. They really don't know, most of them, a city street from a county road, from a state highway. They do understand federal freeways, but for sure they don't understand that they derive their money from different pots of money, and knowing the difference at the legislature and trying to implement that to law is a lot of what we spend our time on. So thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, definitely want to thank you for that intersectionality, no pun intended, or bad pun. It's just so important, and citizens don't understand it, and including even in areas like St. Cloud, they don't know which roads are county or city or anything else, and so what you're doing makes a big difference. And Stearns is clearly kind of the poster child for we need all of the above, so thank you, and thank you for your words about Jody, that Ms. Tyke they're not just kind words, they're so accurate. So we're very fortunate to have her, and nobody can steal her. So I just want to put that out there.
All right. Now, one interesting fact that I think even surprises a lot of legislators is that the combined miles of county roads is about double the state highway system.
Right.
So it's a big system that you're in charge of, and we do our best to help you with it. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Selesky, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Nancy Selesky, and I do both public health and human services for Micah, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I just want to start out by saying it was a really good year at the legislature for public health. That's something, Madam Chair, that I know is near and dear to your heart. Nothing like a pandemic to get everyone's attention in terms of the importance of that. The first thing I would mention is that the legislature appropriated an additional $15 million per biennium to the local public health grant, which represents about a 30% increase. And I cannot tell you how long it's been since we've had an increase. It's been a long time. They also put $15 million per biennium into new local public health infrastructure. They increased home visiting grants by $3 million per biennium. And one of the other things I do want to mention that was very important to public health is there was a proposal at one time to reduce the statewide health improvement program grant, the SHIP program, and that did not pass the legislature. So that was really good news for the legislature, for public health. In terms of human services, we did well as well. We had a couple of our priorities were taken care of. First one I would highlight is the DHS accounting error related to substance use disorder services that was delivered at institutions of mental disease, IMDs. That was a hit to counties of about $8.3 million, and the legislature did make us whole on that priority. Also, we did go forward with the codification of several waivers that the legislature had agreed to. It was carried by Representative Dan Wolgamott. Again, Commissioner Clark, you were really instrumental in identifying which waivers were important at being continued and maybe some that were not necessary any longer. I'll highlight the 4 items. They relate to targeted case management can be delivered through telehealth. Min choices reassessments also can be done through video. We modified the housing support absent days. So if a person needs to leave their home for a period of time for, say, COVID treatment or some kind of other treatment, that they'll have a home to return to once they've satisfactorily healed. Also, we did have MFIP applications can also now be done over the phone. Also, during the regular session, there was a waiver that was approved, and this allows counties up to 5 days to visit with the child that's in the child protection system if it's deemed that the child is not in danger of being near the offender. There are dozens of other waivers that are referenced in the telehealth section of our report. Just want to point out that I laugh at I guess it's a different slide, but there's like 8 bullets on my slide, but about 20 pages of the report. So as you know, Health and Human Services is big. The legislature also did invest in mental health. The Adult Mental Health Initiative grants will be increased by $1.75 million for 3 years. And they also put $16 million in additional capacity for adult mental health crisis services. Those 2 items did pass as well. And finally, they created a new program, $5 million, to establish a children's mental health transition and support team. And this is to facilitate the transition back into the community, those children that are leaving residential treatment, such as the one at Wilmer, the Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health Hospital. Finally, I do want to mention that there were rate increases for employees that work in ICFDD facilities, PCAs, and other home health care providers. Unfortunately, we did pick up one county cost share, and again, this relates to the Wilmer facility, the Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health Hospital. Counties are now responsible for 100% of the cost for that child if they no longer need that level of care. They don't need to be in the hospital any longer, but are awaiting a bed. Counties do pick up that cost, and that's about $2.4 million per biennium on a statewide basis. The legislature was able to come to an agreement at the end relating to the eviction moratorium. People cannot be evicted for 3 months from the date of the signing of the law, so that's October. There is an exception, and again, this relates to non-payment of rent. There is an exception if there's a violation that is relative to non-payment of rent. They've destroyed property or they're a public nuisance, et cetera, then they can be evicted. Also, a landlord is required to give all tenants a 15-day notice upon an eviction being filed. And this off-ramp is intended to drive Minnesotans to the state website, which is renthelpmin.org. We received almost $700 million from the federal government, and this again is to help Minnesotans who have fallen behind on their rent, but also to keep the landlords whole as well. I would just mention a couple things that didn't happen. We were working on, and Stearns County did work on this very much as well, relating to substance use disorder reform. We had a proposal that would have allowed counties to conduct peer recovery supports and also to bill MA for substance use disorder pre-treatment coordination. That bill did move in the Senate, but unfortunately the House didn't pick it up. We are having conversations with DHS as we speak on this. And the other thing is there were 3 proposals that would have shifted some cost to counties at one time in the Senate. Those were also held off. They did not pass. Just to give you a sample of what they were, it would have capped disability waiver allocations. It would have frozen MnChoice's reimbursement allocations at 2019 levels. And also it would have imposed a county cost share on placements of disabled individuals that are 18 to 27 years of age in certain settings. Again, none of that did happen, so we were happy with that. I also would like to close by recognizing your staff. I work very, very closely with Melissa Huberty, Janet Goligoski, Julie Ellis, and they represent not only Stearns County very well, but counties on a statewide basis. And thank you for them as well. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Again, thank you, and for our 3 incredible staff that you just recognized. Nobody can poach them either, so you're going to see a theme here. One item, I just want to thank you, certainly Ms. Huberty and others, is DHS seems to have a notion, members, that it will provide, doing this cost shift will give us an incentive about not keeping people in hospitals, where the real issue is there are not sufficient placements, appropriate placements. And I think it's an understatement to say it's a ridiculous notion that a county would want to keep any adolescent, any child, any adult in a more restrictive setting than is required, but we need more settings. So appreciate your advocacy on that too.
Thank you. That's very accurate. I just would point out that I think in the last numbers I saw, counties were paying like $16 million for these do not meet criteria days where they're sitting in these settings, again, where there's not a bed available elsewhere. So we're working on that. We continue to work on that and try to get those monies invested into the system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Stark, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Before I begin, I want to point out I made an error on the PowerPoint. Somewhere between the second to last version of the bill and the final version, they took out that $500,000 body cam grant for local governments. So I found that out when I was trying to get information on how to get the grants, that it had been taken out. But the good news is that there was an increase in the Community Corrections Act subsidy. It was $1.22 million per year, which I believe is about a $45,000 increase each year of the biennium for Stearns County for community corrections. The bad news about that is that it's not ongoing. So after this biennium, it goes back to the level it was at in 2019. But there is a community supervision study group that was made to look at that funding system and see if there is a way to change it, because currently it does not fund counties equitably. So they have, that's through the Council of State Governments, the Justice Reinvestment Initiative. They did a deep dive into the county probation officer system last month. This month they are looking into Community Corrections Act County, gathering data, trying to see how we can get a better return on investment for our money in probation. Next month, they will be looking at the Department of Corrections, so it's not just county systems. The 911 telecommunications fee decreased from 95 cents to 80 cents. However, the state did double the amount that public safety answering points get per year, which is a good thing because equipment in dispatch centers is very expensive and necessary to keep the 911 system running smoothly. There were no emergency management readiness grants, although it did make it in the House final bill during that first special session, which is pretty far, but I think the fact that there was a lot of federal aid for emergency management is probably why the state decided this is not the year to do that ongoing state contribution. Other things of note, $500,000 each year for the 50% matching grant for court security updates. So the court has started to get a group together to look at those applications and decide who gets the matching grant. It's for things like x-ray machines, metal detectors, which there are still a lot of courthouses that don't have those. The last one is neuropsychological exam requirement. There was a bill that would have required neuropsychological exams in a pre-sentence investigation for every case that involved traumatic brain injury, stroke, or fetal alcohol syndrome. And that would have been a cost bared by the county. Luckily, they did not pass that the way it is. They instead passed a feasibility study in which I'm hoping that they will hear how much it costs to counties, and if they do decide to implement that, that it will include state-provided money to help with those exam costs. And that is all I have for public safety and corrections. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Persky.
Yeah, Carla, thanks for coming in today. Earlier today I was talking with the sheriff, and that was in regards to law enforcement and the number of individuals going into law enforcement now. We're struggling to find quality people. Of course, you know, we've had some challenges across the state with the media and everything relating to law enforcement. I guess what I'm concerned about is counties need quality law enforcement, cities need it, state needs it. Somehow, if we can maybe find a way to encourage people to take on that profession, you know, with the high schools, with the young adults, if there's some way that maybe we can talk about that at AMC as far as promoting getting quality people into law enforcement. I think that'd be good for everybody.
Sounds like that intersection with the higher ed and the workforce committees.
Yes, I was just
Yeah.
thinking that would be a good joint initiative between workforce and corrections, or public safety and workforce to look at programs to provide training for law enforcement.
Great point, thank you. Anything else?
All right, the one last thing that I did forget is that Becky Bales Cramlett, your corrections director, is great. She works, she comes to all the MICA corrections meetings, and she's very active on the MACAC board, which is the Community Corrections Association. So she does some great things for your county.
Thank you. Yes, there's certainly some really good things happening in our county and our region. And Becky, I don't want you to feel left out. You can't go anywhere either, please.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, in the interest of time, I'm going to do a little fast forward. When time permits, we do prioritize a few things for MICA counties and work with partners in the general government area and also environment. I'm going to skip to the environment slide. Just want to point out some successes that we had. You know, this is increasingly becoming a challenge in resources available to manage what is a growing waste stream, despite all the efforts to try and limit and reduce the waste stream going into landfills. And so we are revisiting that. We were successful. There were no proposals on the table and when the session started, but we were successful at getting $700,000 annually increase into the SCORE grants for counties, which is far below what we need. But some work there. We were successful in getting some money along with partners into septic system programs, which is really important, especially in regional center areas like this, where there's a lot of non-compliant septic systems as rural meets urban. More money going into the closed landfill investment fund post-closure care projects. And then one that I know that was closely followed and got a lot of advice from folks in this county was sometimes it's about what we try to make sure doesn't happen, but there was a number of proposals to steer different ways of funding soil and water conservation districts, one of which would have been a mandatory conservation fee that counties would have had to impose, and we were opposed to that, and that did not happen. There's a lot of other proposals. I assume that will come back up again in 2 years, but for now, SWCs are still funded through the water fund, the Clean Water Fund, and more money for invasive species. If you just then go to the next slide, here we are. We're starting to look forward to next legislative session. There is a slew of work groups, some of which we are directly participating in, others which we are following to bring recommendations forward to the next legislative session. It is uncertain times in terms of the polarization, in terms of what will happen, but in the upcoming legislative session, redistricting will obviously be a focus. The remaining federal money will be a focus. Following up with the new federal legislation will be a focus, and there is expected to be a significant state budget surplus or a meaningful state budget surplus, and I have rarely seen that left on the table heading into an election cycle. So one of the things that I know that I feel like we should be prioritizing and looking forward to a conversation with all of you and our boards is a permanent increase in the county program aid formula, pursuing that again this legislative session, along with, I think, county program aid and some other things. So we're looking forward to next legislative session and happy to take your input today, tomorrow, and the weeks ahead through email or phone calls for what you see should be our priorities for next year. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Notch.
Just a quick question. So on the SWCDs, right now that 21 million comes out of the Clean Water Fund. So why all of a sudden they want to find a different funding source? Or is that in addition to the 21 million?
Mr. Mossman.
Commissioner, I think it's true almost since the beginning of that money started to come out of the Clean Water Fund, that there are a number of folks who felt like that maybe wasn't an appropriate use of the Clean Water Fund, there should have been other sources.
It's got water in its name.
Well, I think, if you go back to the very beginning of that conference, so I'm not giving you a position so much as what the history has been, supplement, not supplant. There was a sense that maybe money was already being provided by counties and this was relieving counties. I think that's not happening. That is definitely not happening. In the data that I see, counties have continued to fund and support, with some exceptions probably across the county that are making it more challenging for for all counties at the legislature. But that is and of course that money is coming to an end at some point also, unless there's a renewed constitutional amendment. So there's a mix of things. Property taxes have been talked about. State general fund money would be our preference if there's going to be a different source coming from the state. And equity has also been a part of the conversation.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
All right. Our next item is a public hearing. We have 2 public hearings today. The first of which is on the bond issuance.
Good.
Mr. Portier, do you want to
Madam
come
Chair.
up? Yes.
So do we have to wait till that time in case somebody wants to speak, or doesn't it matter?
I think we can at least get some information before we open it up, but yes, unless you want to take a quick break, which we could certainly do.
No, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I'll make
Okay.
sure we don't open up the
All right.
hearing part of it.
Thank you.
Yes, you're just trying to point out we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule, which is
good.
kind of amazing. So, yeah, it is good. Come on up, Mr. Portier.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Neil Fortier, Executive Director of the Stearns County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. We are required, we as being the HRA and the county are required to host a public hearing regarding the refinance of the existing bonds that we have in place and the additional debt that would be issued to rehab the remaining part of our portfolio. 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, our board held their public hearing and approved the resolution authorizing the refinance of the bonds and the issuance of additional debt. And again, this would be to rehab the remaining portion of our portfolio. As I spoke a couple weeks ago, with this, if approved, we would have a portfolio that is 100% rehab, and which is sorely needed at this point in time. We've got properties that date back to 1976 that need some serious work. We did not receive any comments, nor did anyone attend our public hearing at the HRA. And in speaking with Mr. Schreifels this morning, there was no comments issued regarding this public hearing. And with that, I'd be available for any questions.
Any questions or comments, Commissioner Lensmeyer?
What would be the age of these units that are being rehabbed? How old are they?
Mr. Fortier?
We range in age from 24 years to 37 years old.
Okay, all right. And this is rehab only, it's not additional units?
Correct, it's rehab only. The cost to build additional units today in Stearns County would be approximately $221,000 per unit for an affordable housing unit. We are able to rehab these units for approximately $121,000 per unit, which includes all common areas. But more importantly, it puts in place all Energy Star rated appliances, light fixtures, all the water heaters are updated. So there's a substantial savings to our tenants that reside in these units.
The unfortunate reality of that cost differential is driven by regulatory requirements as opposed to things that are hard costs like lumber and furniture and so forth. So in our efforts to provide this type of housing. We've driven the cost per unit to unrealistic levels. And I don't have an answer for that. It's just one of the sad realities of the programs. The good news is that, okay, with the newest of these being 24 years old, a lot has happened since these units are constructed, and there are a lot more tools available for small cities to do this type of thing on their own. So the necessity of doing this at our level isn't quite as imminent as it's been in the past, but what you're trying to do here, Neil, makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Commissioner Notch?
Neil, is there an average like rent increase then calculated in when you do the improvements?
So with these improvements, as an HRA, our role, our mission is to keep these units affordable. So these units will be kept affordable to people making 80% of area median income, just a small portion of our entire portfolio. Most of them are restricted to 50% of area median income or 30%, which is a very low income threshold, and will be in it for 40 years. I mean, these will not change the market rate. And our rent increases are capped at 5% per year. And that's part of the fight that we have every year is, or struggle we have every year is, you know, we have these restrictions in place, yet we're trying to keep these properties up to date. You know, we should be setting aside $450 per unit per year into a reserve and replacement fund. So in 15 years, we can do a rehab, but capping the rent increases at 5% kind of handcuffs us. So part of the regulations.
And then does the rent, is that just rent? Are utilities separate then from the rent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, they are, Commissioner.
If there's no other questions right now, we can open up the public hearing, and then Commissioner Mergen, I don't know if you have anything you want to add?
No.
No, okay. You were really helpful on this issue last week. Commissioner Lensmeyer, anything
Yeah,
before we open it up?
the only additional comment I had is that, yeah, the programming is available to small cities, but the small cities that we have in Stearns County are a lot more sophisticated than they were years ago. So if it comes to pass that they want to do those, they have the personnel and assets available. It simply wasn't there back in the day. So just a added observation. I don't know that it adds any substance to our current discussion or not, but that's what you got.
Thank you, Commissioner Lensmeyer. Let's go ahead and open the public hearing. Public hearing on the issuing of bonds is open. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Recognizing that we have no one who wished to speak attending virtually or any other comments submitted, the public hearing will be closed at this point. And looking for a motion to approve the bond issuance.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergen. Second? Is there a second?
Persky, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we have our next public hearing. This is to consider, public hearing to consider the 2022 proposed fee schedule changes. Dr. Williams, do we have any presentation for the board at this point?
Yes, Randy will handle this.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Choi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We did not receive any public comments either on this. I have a short PowerPoint I'll go through before you open it. So every year we study 25% of the county departments and their fees. And this year was the attorney, extension, information services, human services, and parks. And then also we invite other departments to look at their fees and propose any changes. And we did get some from environmental services and property services this year. And we work with those departments that are part of the study to determine the average cost of that service. We look at volume, if it's a public or private value, is it a mandated services, and also the change in revenue that a fee change would bring about. For the all county departments, which is one of the areas we looked at, we changed the fee for the certified mail to reflect the actual cost of that, plus a $5 processing fee. The IT professional services, we just moved that out of IS and into the all county department area. And then state maps we're not getting anymore, so we removed those from the schedule. And then for the auditor treasurer, we just increased the passport photo by $1. Environmental services had some changes. The significant change was the penalty for not having a permit. It was a substantial increase that was recommended by the Planning Commission. Also, wetlands is adding a fee for replacement plan application using Ag Bank. The Human Services eliminated a number of fees. The Rule 24 and the chemical use assessment, the fees for that were less than the work necessary to track and charge the fee. And also the child care background fee was dropped due to the Family First legislation. Parks had some changes also. Parks Commission recommended changes to the daily and annual park permits. So as you probably see on the schedule, there's a seasonal adjustment now, a $10 fee during the busy time versus a $5 fee during a non-busy time. There's also a penalty if you don't get a fee that's actually higher than the daily fee that was charged in the past. So there's some incentive to actually get a parking pass rather than not. These changes will result in about $100,000 of additional revenue for the Parks Service, and some of that is going to be used to help fund the patrolling of the parks. Property Services had a few changes also. The certificate of plat correction was decreased, increased the final registration land survey to cover the increased costs, and they eliminated the 911 addressing fee. It's a relatively low fee, and this is a customer service measure that didn't really cost much of a revenue loss. So with that, if there's any questions, we do have the departments here able to answer any questions on their specific fees.
Members, any questions? Commissioner Lensmeyer.
This is maybe a discussion for another time, but some of the situations we find ourselves in is the administration of some of our fee program. The costs to the county outstrip any revenues of the particular fees. It's hopelessly unrealistic for those fees to cover total costs, because some of those are significant. But this is more in Dr. Willie's wheelhouse. Are you aware of any studies out there where they've taken a look at this cost comparison? I don't know that a cost-benefit comparison is what I'm talking about, but certainly I would think somewhere someone has taken a look at this, and if not, number one, it's unfortunate. Number two, would it be worth our while to undertake something like that?
Commissioner
Dr.
Lensmeyer.
Williams.
Thank you. There are companies that do much what we do in-house. here is do an analysis to see how much of our costs are being covered by the fees. If that's, I think that's what you're getting at. We could certainly
I think it's what I'm getting at too.
we certainly could do a comparison of what other cities and counties charge for similar services as well. But we're fortunate that we do have staff that can pretty much mirror what some of those other companies do. They may do it a little different, a little more in depth. I know when I was with the city of St. Cloud, we would do that periodically just to assess all our fees. And then the question becomes, of course, as you have articulated, I think at our last meeting when we set this hearing, is how much of our costs do we want to be paid by fee, and how much should the general public pay through the property tax? And that's a policy decision that the board makes every time that you consider the fees.
So as Mike said, we do look at and calculate the cost of those departments that are under the study. The other departments that just want to change it, we don't look at that until they're up for the study time. So those departments, we do a detailed fee study, and you probably remember Jim Stigura, our previous finance director. He had a manufacturing background, so doing cost analysis was pretty second nature for him. So he came up with a good process to do that. And we also do look at what other counties are charging for fees when they actually match. You know, all the fees we charge sometimes differ a little bit from what we call it versus what other counties may do. So, but as Mike said also, you know, what part of the fee should cover the cost is an area I think that is a judgment call that, you know, the departments typically are making a recommendation on. So,
Commissioner Lensmeyer.
The cost, the comparison with other counties is of less value than it would seemingly indicate without any, introspection on this, because they're, I doubt that they've done those types of studies on the impact or the generation or the benefit of those fees. I mean, it's the comparison isn't nearly as valuable as it would seemingly indicate, but I don't have an idea on a better way to do it just now, but it has merit to see if there are other ways to do this. But sorry to drag this out, you know, the horse is starting to gasp.
Well, actually, Commissioner Lensmeyer, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I've been thinking a similar thing about the comparisons with the other counties. Some things it helps us, and other things it doesn't necessarily, especially if we're talking about, you know, really looking at either philosophical or other ways of considering this. And I'm certainly thankful we've got staff that are able to do the kind of job we pay somebody externally to do. And is there something else out there that we should be considering, since we kind of keep modifying, building off of what we have from year to year? So something for you all to consider. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing, if that's okay. The public hearing regarding the 2022 proposed fee schedule changes is open. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed fee changes? Is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed fee changes? Is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed fee changes? And hearing that we did not get any other information and there is no one on the on virtually right now, we will close the public hearing. Okay, members, looking for a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move the changes to the fee schedule.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. Is there a second?
I can second that. It's even though, as I just made the point, it's the blind leading the blind, but we don't have any better solution that's immediately available. So let's go with it.
Thank you. Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion is approved.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Persky.
Lee, I'd just like to comment about, your concerns about the fee schedule and, the equity in that and how general government also, benefits from that and also puts into that. That's difficult stuff to also work out. When a person pays for a permit, whether it be for septic system or shoreline or even a restaurant paying for that, that's for their business. But yet then again, the public has the benefit of knowing that that was done correctly. And so the person 20 years from now that buys that property, that person had to have the permit that had to be inspected, and that should be. So, there's benefit to the public, which maybe we don't always see. Same thing at the restaurant. We hope that things are clean and orderly within that restaurant too, which is a benefit to the public too. So to sort that all out could be somewhat difficult, but we can have the discussion.
Thank you, members. We're scheduled for a brief break. Let's try to come back in about 5 minutes.
Yep.
The meeting is in recess. Our next agenda item is Public Works. Ms. Teig?
Good morning. Jody Teig, Stearns County Engineer. For my first item today, the information begins on page 99 in your agenda packets. The Rocori Trail Construction Board has asked that Stearns County act as fiscal agent for the Rocori Trail Phase 3 construction. We've entered into 2 previous agreements on phases 1 and 2, and basically all of the money would come through Stearns County, so payments to contractors, consultants, et cetera, would go out. In this particular case, some of that money would not be available till federal fiscal years 2023 and 2024, but today, for the explanation and a little bit more presentation, I have from the Rocori Trail Construction Board, Scott Hedlund, who is the engineer with SEH. I have Kevin Mooney from the City of Richmond and Pete Weber from the City of Cold Spring, and I believe Kevin Mooney is going to take it away.
Mr. Moody, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners, for hearing us today. I don't know if, I know that Mr. Mergen is pretty familiar with our program. He comes to all of our meetings, but I don't know how familiar some of you are with the Rocori Trail or not, but or Rocori is, because we're from Stearns County, but we are, the original goal that we started in 2014, so we're talking 17 years, has been a connection trail between the 3 cities of the Rocori Trail. And we have 2 of our phases complete. We have trail connecting Richmond to Cold Spring, and we have trail coming out of Rockville. We just don't have a connection to Cold Spring right now. So we've been working on about the last 6 years of putting 3.5 miles of trails connecting those 2 cities. And we have finally accomplished our goals in funding. So because our communities are pretty small, we need to find a fiscal agent that can handle that money as it comes in and goes out. And that's what we're here to ask you guys for today. We used a lot of different funding sources for this. We've received federal money from the federal TAP program. We did get some state money as well from the LCCMR program, and that took forever to get through. That was like a 3-year odyssey, you know. We received some more federal funds through the DNR Fed Rec program. That was a smaller grant of $130,000, and then we have committed to a local match of the 3 cities of just a little shy of $150,000, which then brings us to, I don't know if that was me or not, which brings us to the total amount that we need to complete this last phase. So we're simply asking that you be our fiscal agent and that we can rely on you. We're not asking for any funds. You have provided funds to the Rocori Trail in the past, but we're not asking for that. We just need somebody to kind of channel our money in and channel it out. So are there any questions?
Any questions or comments from Mr. Mooney? Really appreciate the work. It's exciting to think this is finally, but you were talking about Odyssey, you might as well have called the whole adventure, right?
Exactly, 17 years, it'll be 18 years by the time we're completed with it, but you know what, it's well worth it. Our communities are using this facility a lot. It's always busy with bikers and runners and walkers and people with dogs and stuff. It's a very popular facility within our community, so.
Great. Looking for a motion to approve acting as the fiscal agent for Phase 3 of the Rocori Trail.
I would make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion's passed.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
As a side note on that last item, I will work with the auditor's office to prepare that fiscal agent agreement, similar wording to the past agreements we've had, then that would subsequently be approved by all 3 cities and Stearns County. So it will come back to the board as a consent item based on this action.
Great.
So I do have one miscellaneous item.
Okay.
Unless you had something.
Nope.
Okay. I handed out something during the break to each of you. So we have been requested by the city of Sartell and a developer to release access control that was purchased by MnDOT when Trunk Highway 15 was built. This access will be one of multiple accesses to a development in the northwest quadrant of Highway 15 and County Road 1. After careful examination of this right-in, right-out access, because there's a median down the middle of County Road 1, would be approximately equidistant between the Heritage Drive roundabout and Highway 15. As part of the access permit, the applicant would construct a right turn lane into this approach. And again, as I stated, there would be more than one access onto River Oaks Lane, which is on the northeasterly side of the development. This is actually, we found out, relatively common practice by the state of Minnesota on their own access control, depending on the situation. So after careful examination of the traffic patterns with the roundabout and the traffic signal and multiple accesses, Highway Department staff concurred that this would be a good way to get this plot of land developed. So what I'm asking today is for the board to approve this access control release so that our county auditor treasurer can sign. It is in the form of a quitclaim deed. This has been reviewed by MnDOT attorneys. It's in the exact same format that MnDOT uses, and it was drafted by the developer. And I can take any questions.
Questions, comments? Commissioner Persky?
Jody, say on that access, that's just off 15, heading north there. Is there quite an elevation change, though, there? Isn't there a hill that access is going to be going up?
Yes, and that will be approached with the developer's site plan. Like I stated, there will be a right turn lane, and we haven't looked in great detail at the elevations of their site plan. We were mostly looking at the geometrics. Okay. But this would be, all of that would occur within the developer's site.
Okay.
Commissioner Persky?
And then also, I was just looking at, again, that it's a lot of impervious there. And of course, it being so close to the river there, there'd be concerns about stormwater on that. And that's going to all be handled by the city of Sartell.
Ms. Teich?
Thank you. The city of Sartell is reviewing those site plans, and I know they've had discussions about impervious area and stormwater treatment. That would not fall under the highway department's purview, so we did not examine that in great detail. But I do know that they had a stormwater pond along the property they purchased.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve control release access of this area.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. See no further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
That's all I have unless anyone has anything for me.
Sounds good.
Thank you
very much. Environmental Services.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. So immediately upon passing your policy, a request came in, which is not unusual for environmental services. But the good news is this is the only thing I have on the agenda for you today. So it was a request by Darlene Dillon for an administrative subdivision fee waiver. I provided the information to you in your packet. Essentially what has occurred is there was a document that was recorded 37 years ago that said the property was 2.5 acres. In actuality, the measurements on that deed weren't 2.5 acres. So essentially when it was recorded with a differential between the 2.5 acres and the actual measured area. In discussion with the auditor's office and with property services, essentially it's the responsibility of the landowner at the time of recording of the document to verify that everything is correct. We do not use the acreage on a document. I think there was some misperception by her family that some additional land was lost. There was no land lost, it just didn't get transferred with it because the only thing that was transferred was the measurements. So it subsequently has been corrected by the auditor's office in the description so that it now reads 1.82 acres as the measurements had previously said. So she is looking to add additional land area to her property and would like the administrative subdivision fee waived. And I had explained all of this to her, and I sent her this information as well. We would request denial because it has nothing to do with the administrative subdivision, but past practice and an attorney for them who wrote the deed with an acreage that didn't match the description that was submitted. I can take questions and I will answer them to the best of my ability.
Commissioner Morgan.
Who actually made the original error?
The attorney for the landowner who incorrectly wrote 2.5 and then a description that didn't match 2.5.
And the county let that fly through?
The county only looks at the information that's presented, assumes correct, and that was the practice back in the 80s. Randy, I can look to you to that.
Whatever was presented, the county is always just going to let it fly through, no matter how big an
I
error.
don't think that would be the case.
No, the county does
Mr.
not
Schwartz.
look at legal description and calculate acreage. We're not private surveyors. So when they come in to record a deed, the recorder's office looks to see if certain things are correct and they record the deed. The auditor's office makes sure that the property is there and it's a taxable property, but we're not going out there and surveying their boundaries and determine acreage. That's their
Which is pretty
responsibility.
typical in terms of when we buy and sell property. That's why we get all those great fees when we buy and sell property, is somebody's got to do the search, and if there's a question.
This is a
for
relatively
it.
common thing, that your acreage, that is being recorded is different than what's on the document, because a lot of properties are transferred without somebody doing a private survey to determine that.
So
Commissioner Morgan.
trying to get myself wrapped around this. So if this would have come in and said it's 80 acres, but it's only 2.5 acres or whatever, that county wouldn't ring a bell or anything?
Mr. Strife.
Yeah, I think if something's off that gross amount, that probably would be questioned, I would imagine. The recorder's office is really looking at other things besides acreage when they're recording a document. And the auditor's office is looking at, is this a taxable parcel in the right place? If it was 80 versus 2 acres, right, I think that probably would be said there's a problem there, and we would send it back to them. But we don't have the authority to correct that deed. They have to do that. So.
Thank you.
Looking for any questions or a motion?
Yeah, I got a question. The actual waiver of the fee, is the waiver of the fee to make the correction or to move forward with what she wants to do?
The waiver of the fee request is for her to add additional land area, the 0.62 acres, to her property to make it what they perceived as they always had, which was 2.5. So it's a request to waive a fee to, in their mind, make it what they had thought they had all along. But it is not required for them to buy and or sell or transact that property in any way. It's a lot of record now. And I've explained that to her as well.
So they would be getting a service then, other than the correction of the error?
The administrative subdivision would be a service to add that land area to that other existing property. And that would be the service that she's requesting to be waived, that fee for that service.
But this was something they thought they had all along.
Correct. So when it was recorded, the document that came in said 2.5, which now it's my understanding that most of those documents don't have an acreage associated with them for these exact reasons. And then the dimensions were just given, and the dimensions did not equal 2.5. They were 1.82. So
So to clarify, it had the dimensions and it had acreage. Is that correct?
Correct.
So one was correct and one was incorrect.
correct.
And so the person who originally did this unfortunately created a problem for them.
Correct.
And they do not need to make a change, though, to buy or sell, to end up doing a transaction.
Correct.
Okay. So there's a request in front of us. We need a motion to either approve or deny their request to waive this fee for what they would like to see happen.
I'll make a motion to deny waiving the fee.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I can second
Okay. Any further discussion? Recognizing this has got to be complicated for the people involved. All in. Go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, and, you know, the biggest thing is that the description drawn out is correct. It's
Right.
just the-
Exactly. That's why the acreage shouldn't have been
And it's
on
not
there.
anything the county did wrong.
Nope.
It's done by
Nope.
outside parties.
Right.
So I don't see anything in here telling who this lawyer was that did that.
Well, they would need to go, they could go
Yeah,
back to that
they could go
person,
back.
although it was a very long time ago. And they don't need a change to be able to sell the property. But if they want it, yes, Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
This is more of an observation. In his tenure here, when Denny was working in the auditor's office and was in charge of issues like this, he took he was tough enough to handle it, no problem, but he took a fair amount of crap for being a stickler on how and when and where and all that, how documents were recorded. And whereas his predecessor was, well, I guess it's here, they paid the fee, what the hell. So Denny in his tenure here, it's one of those situations where he's probably saved the system a fair amount of dollars with his relatively hard-nosed approach, though that will never be fully appreciated. So sometimes the diligence of our employees, past and present, goes underappreciated.
Commissioner Morgan.
I just want to make sure I have this correct. So this was neither the fault of the county nor the fault of this landowner, correct?
Well, you could say the landowner should have checked to see whether the dimensions that were on there, which were accurate, was the same as the acreage at the time. I mean, that is part of when you're doing any kind of searches or you're having it. I mean, that is also incumbent on the person. And
That's
so
correct,
just-
and they get to choose the attorney and the real estate firms they're using, so there's varying quality out there.
Which is why if there's been an attorney and a service involved, when it comes to us, it would be understandable that there should be an expectation that they're putting something on that's correct.
As Lee's mentioned, Stearns County goes beyond where most counties go when we come to transfers of property. If somebody comes in and they have a deed to record, theoretically, we're supposed to record that. We're not supposed to analyze it to see if it's right or wrong. We do go beyond that step. Now, do we check the acreage to the exact amount? No, but we certainly would catch an 80 versus a 2-acre part. So it is their responsibility to make sure they're recording an accurate deed.
I've been in this
Commissioner Morgan.
situation myself somewhat. And you generally take the word of what are the so-called professionals as a person that does this once or twice in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
It isn't necessarily, just because somebody's a professional doesn't necessarily mean they can't make mistakes. Certainly doctors are professionals, but the sick joke that's told about them is they bury their mistakes. So the punchline is you can have the sharpest knife in the drawer working on your stuff, but could still screw up. This is pure speculation on my part, but I'm wondering if something like this is the reason for title insurance. I haven't heard anybody bring up the idea of title insurance, not that we're all real estate wizards, but I would think that in terms of the individual, I don't know if that was in place or not. If it was in place, that might be a cause of action against the title insurance company every once in a while, even greater and greater and greater once in a while now here. That does take place. And title companies put themselves in a position where they have to pay. Well, that's a discussion for another matter.
Right.
I mean, we're pretty sharp, but we don't have everything covered.
A motion has been made and seconded to deny the $250 fee waiver request in this instance. Let's go ahead and take the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Let's go ahead and move to a roll call.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Nay.
Commissioner Notch,
Aye.
Commissioner Persky,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
I have no other items unless you have something for me.
Thank you very much. Okay, administration. Mr. Hammes.
Good morning.
Hello. Do you have? So we have in front of us the preliminary budget.
You do. We have the 2022 proposed budget to bring to you this morning. We're going to be without Sarah, but Steve and Randy and I will take team to make the presentation this morning. In your packet was an executive summary of the budget and a budget book, which includes pretty much all the information that will be in the PowerPoint presentation as well. We've been, hit that slide. We've been, of course, working on the budget for quite some time now. You can see in front of you the budget schedule. We start that as early with department directors as early as May and bring the budget to you as we did at your last meeting, a very preliminary look at the numbers, but a more in-depth look at our performance measures. And today we'll give you more detail. And then by the end of September, which would really be your next meeting, you would adopt the preliminary budget and the preliminary levy. And of course, then we'll hold a TNT meeting on the last day of November, and then expect the board to adopt the budget on December 14th. We prepare the budget with our mission and values in mind. You see that, as we talked about this morning, exceptional public services to assure safe, healthy, vibrant county for all, and our values are professional, coachable, responsive, collaborative, and fair and equitable. And you could see that even as we presented the performance measures at your last meeting, that our values were prominent, our mission and values were prominent within those documents. So we prepared the 2022 with some ideals in mind. Some of these you've seen year after year, but a couple of new items there is we talk about use of fund balance, and we are going to talk about that we are recommending a significant use of fund balance, knowing that we do have some leftover CARES and could have some leftover ARP funds. As you did today, we looked at the fee structure, and you'll see and hear, and you heard this morning also, that particularly the parks fee is going to support some additional services within the park system, particularly Quarry Park. Another key thing here is our debt. Our debt obligation this year is considerably lower than the levy we're recommending, but if you look down to the infrastructure portion there, we have a looming huge project if we're going to build a new jail justice center. And so we're recommending that we keep that levy, actually to even increase the debt levy. And in technology, you will see that our recommendation to use the project fund particularly will do some major upgrades to some of our systems that support the work we do. Another item there, develop a digital government strategy and roadmap. That's part of our strategic plan, and we're working on that. And the organizational here, of course, some of that is working with our legislator and MICA and AMC to ensure that we continue to have the support we need for our state mandated programs and services. So what we've pulled together for this year is a budget that does have a significant increase in expenditures. I would say we're over 8%. And I really, if you looked at the executive summary, I tried to note in there really the four things that I think are driving, or not that I think, well, the four things that are driving that. Of course, one of them is personnel. A huge portion of our budget, more than 65%, supports personnel, so it's no surprise that increases in wages and salaries will be a major part of that. But road construction it's going to be a large year for road construction. In the current year, we budgeted for $18 million, and this year we have almost $28 million, and so that's driving that number up. And then, as I said, use of the project fund of almost $5 million, as opposed to last year, $500,000. Those three are big budget drivers when you look at the total expenditures. And also, it's an election year, and that's about a $700,000 or $800,000 increase in the general, a part of the general fund to fund the election. If you translate that all to levy, it's not going to cost the 8% or 8 or 9%, but we do have a proposed increase of 4.25%. Again, mostly driven by employee costs and elections. For the most part, the road construction is a big increase, but certainly not on the levy. And so this is just a summary of sort of the non-levy revenue funding. We have an increase of $10 million in revenues. And again, most of that attributed to the highway construction. Almost $9 million of that $10 million is devoted to highway construction. And then we have, just to illustrate the trends here, this would be a little higher than the last few years with the 4.25%. The levy history is the one that I kind of wanted to spend just a minute on. Is when we compare to other counties, we've tended to be a little on the lower side of the average, and I think we'll be there again this year, even if we do end up at the 4.25. What I'm hearing from other counties and MICA counties is that the average is going to be higher than where we are. We'll report on that at the next meeting. I should know pretty much what other counties are doing by the time you take another look at the budget. That's the broad overview, and as I said, there's much more in the executive summary, but those are the main budget drivers. We do have, and I'll let Steve take over the presentation at this point, we do have a recommendation to hire 4 additional people, and 3 of those are resulting from previous studies that made recommendations, and another is most funded with the increase in the park revenues.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Steve Hammes, Assistant Administrator. As Mike indicated, we are looking at adding 4 positions to the budget for 2022. Departments asked for a total of 14 staff in the request phase from departments, and as a budget committee, in trying to keep the levy down, we wanted to ensure that we were only looking at mission-critical positions that were funded partially or all by off-levy sources, and ones that reduced costs. So these are the ones that were left. So we have a position in the auditor's office in the license center to help with the growth there, and again, they have funding sources to do that. In highway, we were looking at doing more in-house engineering and reducing our reliance on consultants, and so that should be at least a one-for-one trade-off. And then, as you know, in the sheriff's office, you approved the fee study increases, and again, part of those fees are going to go to pay for the increase in deputy costs. And then in dispatch, again, that is from our study, as a requirement, that something we need to do something with. Now, full cost for all these positions is much higher than what you see here. The Budget Committee, again, really was leery on adding any positions to the budget, but based on some of the critical needs for these positions, looked at offering some of these at staggering them throughout the year. We haven't done that for a very long time, but in this year, it was the prudent thing to do to get some relief for these departments. Any questions?
Commissioner Morgan?
Well, are you okay with questions from on?
Well, just on this one, I thought I saw some expressions that indicate a question. Otherwise, we'll go on and certainly we answer all your questions at the end.
I have a question on page 116 of the packet.
So Commissioner Morgan, would you be okay if we got through the
Yep,
rest of it?
I'm
And
fine
then
with that.
Okay, let's make sure so
Okay.
you're hearing that. Okay, good.
All right. Looking at the general categories of the budget, Mike did talk about this, is looking at drivers. Again, personnel is going up 4% based on our projections. The biggest increase is in services. Again, that $5 million increase there is, again, almost totally from highway construction. And you see, again, a $4.5 million increase in capital outlay, and that, again, is all the technology systems that we're going to be upgrading next year. I did separate out those two, so you can see road construction again. We have a 35% increase in road construction for 2022, and a almost 900% increase in the use of the project fund. And again, I'll get into those slides in just a second here. Outside agencies, again, the general fund does fund a number of outside agencies that are either joint powers like the library or the radio board, ones that are statutorily allowed, such as the county fair or the soil and water district, or others that are designated by the board as ones that we provide money to on an annual basis, essentially a bit of a grant. While requests came in at $4.3 million, we did trim that back to $4.1. Please note that the Regional Child Advocacy Center, that's through Centricare, is one that last year both the general fund and human services provided money to. And as part of this budget, we're shifting that one completely over to the human services fund to do through a contract as opposed to as a grant. Capital improvement projects, again, every year we try to bring to you what our next year's capital improvement projects are, and these are the same ones that we showed you last year. Again, due to COVID and everything else that was going on, we did not do any work on these two projects. And part of that is also tied into the jail study. Depending on what board's decisions are related to the jail study will impact, there'll be some bleed over into how these projects get completed as well. So we'll be talking more about this in the next few months. Major technology projects that Mike had mentioned earlier include the sheriff's main software system that runs the dispatch, the jail, all the patrol, not just for our staff, but then all of the police departments across the county. We are estimating that at a $2.5 million project. Our HR payroll system is like 14, 15 years old, and we are told that we either need to upgrade to their new system, which is expensive on its own, or find someone else. And so we are going through the process now of determining what type of system that we need. We're currently in a pilot with our phone system, trying to upgrade that to something that is good in the post-COVID world, of being probably a VoIP system, so that a lot of employees will be able to use the phone through their laptops and upgrade that for something that's flexible and adaptable as we move forward. The other two are ones that we've been hearing about for the last several years. One is the county attorney's case management system has been around, I think, almost as long as Janelle's been in office, and that system needs to be upgraded or replaced. And then the tax and CAMA system, MCCC, has been working on upgrading that one for about a decade, and they've finally come to a solution. And so that cost is just Stearns County's portion of the MCCC system. So those are the major technology projects. There's a lot of other ones that IS will be taking care of that are much smaller. And there's a record number of requests from departments for technology. COVID unleashed everyone's imaginations and looking for solutions on how to make work faster, more efficient, and better. And they did a very good job of trying to narrow down the priorities for that for 2022. Moving over to road construction. Again, this is just a summary of the sources for road construction for 2022. Again, we're moving from a $18 million program to a $25 million program next year. As you see, a lot of that, the biggest share is from state aid. The transportation sales tax and the county's wheelage tax combined are about $5 million toward that program. And of course, we do have county levy of $2.2 million as well for next year. This slide looks at debt service compared to our debt payments. So the red line is the levy. County administration has always tried to keep the levy fairly flat. Again, it's for the public, essentially like our credit card payments. We try to keep it so that that line doesn't have any significant spikes or dips, so that again, we can try to control the levy and manage the impact of debt service on everyone's property taxes. The debt service is used for all the projects that we bond for, so remodeling of the administration building, for the service center addition that we completed, and for the upcoming jail study results and whatever project comes out from that. The blue line, as you see, is the actual payments, and so you see some years our payments on our debt service on our credit cards are higher than what we charge in the levy, and some years it's less. And again, that's the way we manage and try to keep it so that it doesn't impact people dramatically in a swing from one year to the next. The spike in the future years is our estimation of what our debt payments are going to be required to be, depending on what kind of a jail center we come up with. So this is just another discussion point to bring up to the board as we look forward for the future, that as we look to build a new jail center, a new jail, county justice center, and whatever else that entails, that is going to be a large project, and it will actually have an impact that we'll have to incorporate into our levy increases down the road. Use of fund balance. So again, most of these are ones you saw on the technology list of the large technology projects, the CAMA system, HR payroll, and the sheriff system. We are also going to use fund balance in the project fund to get us a couple of additional dispatch stations to help with that expansion, and to do significant upgrade to our 800 megahertz system, which is the radio communications for our patrol, for dispatch to coordinate with all the cops in the county, as well as with all the ambulance services and fire departments across our county. That's the largest piece, but not the only piece of our use of fund balance. We are using fund balance in other parts of our budget. In the general fund, we are going to be using some fund balance to pay for an exploration of the new county logo. That's something that administration has talked about with leadership and the board at our strategic planning retreats for the last several years. We do need to buy some additional election equipment for the election year. Facilities needs a few pieces of equipment as well, an excavator, a floor sweeper, and a replacement for our van, which is, I think, over 20 years old, and I think was one we salvaged from a raid. And then in the Parks Department, we have a selection of things that we're paying for from fund balance as well. The biggest one is the Parks Master Plan. One of our goals will hopefully be able to find some additional sources to offset that, but at default, we are looking at paying for that out of fund balance. And then in highway, we are, as you see, we built up some extra wheelage tax last year that we're going to use as part of our construction plan for 2022 to come up with that total of $5.5 million of using fund balance for next year's budget. Now I'll turn it over to Randy.
So we started the end of 2020 with $83 million of fund balance. And our budget expenditures are $164 million, so that comes to 51% percentage. That's higher than the recommended amount. This does have the CARES funding in there of about $6.2 million. So before the CARES funding, we were normally around that 47%. So that bumped us up a little bit there. So using the fund balance of $5.5 million, get us down to $78 million in fund balance. That will get us back to about 47%. And the thing I'll tell you on using that much fund balance in one year is in future years, we will have to use fund balance to keep the levy in check. You don't go from 5.5 back down to zero use of fund balance. So although the fund balance of 5.5 are one-time expenditures, every budget has one-time expenditures, and that kind of sounds contradictory, but there's normally equipment that you need to keep on buying. So I guess be prepared for in the future, we'll continue to use fund balance until we can wean ourselves off of that. Our county tax rates are going in the right direction. It's a very positive trend. And this happens because the growth in tax capacity or our growth in tax base is higher than our levy. So this is a positive development. Where your prop tax dollars go, general government is the biggest at 46%. That's where most of our departments are, such as the sheriffs and auditors and admin and environmental services. Next is human services at 36, and then road and bridge at almost 9%, and then some smaller ones from there. Changes in tax capacity. So new construction is 221 million, almost 222. That's a very healthy amount, one of our higher years. Our tax capacity increase and it's 2.5 million, but more importantly, the tax from these sources is about 1.2 million. Our levy is going up for about 3.5 million. Additionally on here is decertification of TIF districts. Those are about 142,000 of additional tax that's added to our base. So the two of those combined, about 39% of our levy is being paid for by these new sources.
And in your previous slide, you've got general government as a big portion there. What's all included in general government?
Oh boy. Sheriff is the biggest, environmental services, emergency management, auditor, admin, HR, attorneys.
Now, property services are there?
Property services.
I'd kind of like to see that in the future broken down a little bit more,
Okay.
rather than just.
Sure. We could do a slide just on the general government, because yeah, that's kind of the catch-all where everybody goes.
That'd be helpful. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Persky.
I'm just interested, Randy, that's replaced the basic pie chart.
Yes.
That's maybe the first time I've seen it presented in that way, but it's interesting.
Thought we'd try something different this year.
Okay.
And I guess a question going back, yes, that really is pretty interesting. When with Commissioner Mergen's request, I know that one time recently you had broken out overall public safety, which some of which is also human services related. So it may be, knowing that there's related, it's not just general. So if you do a slide, Commissioner Mergen, I agree with you, it'd be helpful to see it. One of the things maybe too is you could show us how big public safety is, recognizing some of that's, a lot is in general government and some of it's in human services.
Typically, about half of the general government is going to be the sheriff and the attorney's office. It's close to about half.
And then how much of human services do you know is ends up being public safety?
I don't know that.
That's just something that would be useful for the public to see before. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next slide. There we go. Change in the tax base. So this is the market value change in the different areas, or actually tax capacity change. So residential non-homestead and agricultural non-homestead look large, but typically there's some movement between them and then the regular residential homestead and ag homestead. They just have to do some applications. So when a new property is purchased, automatically they go into a non-homestead until they have the application done. So there'll be some movement among those numbers. The most different number on here is utilities with a 7% decrease. I think you've all heard about the issues with utilities in the court cases and all that. So we have a lot of court cases that are not going well. This is state assessed, so this is not our assessor's department that these properties are, and there's a lot of big settlements that are going the wrong way for us. So that's why we have the 7% decrease. I think it is a legislative item that we have to keep our eye on. So, and the total then is increase of 4.76%, which is a very healthy increase. So this is a slide of individual properties, what their change in the county tax would be, and this first one assumes no change in property values. So this would be no change in property values. And this is a result of the county tax rate going down. Everybody would see a decrease. So it shows you the importance of a market value change on the property. If you didn't have that, everybody would see a decrease. And this is then with the average increase in properties. For instance, a resident homestead going up 5.5%, ag going up 3.76%, and then you'll see the percentage increases on the right. And the residential homestead, I'll go into that a little bit more detail, but seasonal rec, had a very big increase there because their market value went up over 8.5%. So. Then on residential homestead, there's three factors that come into affect their taxes. First is a change in market, and as you see on the slide, that's like the third or fourth column over, change in tax due to market. That's the biggest change. But also what happens as their market value goes up, different than others, is they lose their homestead exclusion. So the homestead exclusion maxes out at $30,400 at $76,000. And then that exclusion continues to go down until you get to $416,000. So as their value goes up, they lose some of that exclusion. And then, of course, we help that a little bit with the tax rate going down, so they don't see as big of a gain. Now I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Thanks, Randy. One of the things Randy suggested was the use of fund balance is quite high, or our proposed use of fund balance is high. And I agree with Randy that, you can't sustain that. But I think we all, as we plan for that, we recognize that a few of those big chunks, those major system upgrades are almost one time. We're not going to have those kinds of needs every year. But as you also saw, there is some, smaller equipment that we would see kind of every year. So we will need to pay attention to that in the future. Next year, the local option sales tax dedicated to transportation will expire, and so we'll begin to have a discussion with the board about that in October. I think Jody and I plan to begin that discussion with you in October. Again, as Steve talked about the debt service plan today, in 2022, our debt obligation is like $2.4 million less than what we're recommending we levy. But looking at where we will have to take that when we do have a big project, we're saying we should leave that, and then of course those funds will be available to help with that project as well. I think those are the highlights that I would say as we look to the future. And then the final, summary is, yes, we have a budget with a healthy increase. I think we've noted the areas that are driving that. It does end up with a levy of 4.25%. As has been described to you, their tax capacity is up a little bit larger than that, so our rate will actually go down slightly, 0.5%. And the rest of the process, I think you all know that, but at your next meeting, we would expect the board to approve the preliminary levy, and then you don't need to adopt the final levy until after the Truth and Taxation hearing. And you have a board meeting scheduled for December 14th, which I would anticipate we do that. Then you have another board meeting, I think we set for the 21st, that we said if necessary. It was so close to the holidays that we're thinking we may not have to have that meeting.
Commissioner Mergen, you had a question.
I've got several
I got
now.
answered. I figured you had more than one, but I just wanted to make sure I went to you first since you had.
Okay, this one, the jail study, have you done a comparison of the cost of some rural land purchase versus an expansion of the current facility?
Commissioner Morgan, yes, we are doing that. We actually expanded our contract with our consulting firm, and they are doing a pretty thorough analysis of that. Of course, it still needs to be within the city of St. Cloud, but yeah, we would have.
As I understand that.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, I'm understanding that differently. The only thing that as I read it, is that the sheriff has to have an office within the city of St. Cloud.
Well, not sure, we went through some of this a couple of years ago, but.
We did, and there's two pieces. The sheriff has to have an office in the county seat, yes.
Yep.
The courts also have to be in the county seat. If the jail is not in the county seat, the courts still need to be. And then we're going to do a lot of transports. That adds costs for staffing, for mileage, vehicle replacements, and other things that are typically cost prohibitive. And pretty much the sheriff, as they did tours of county jails across the state, whenever they talked to someone, it was like, don't make the mistake we did about not having your jail and courthouse in the same location.
Okay, but there is no straight rule that it has to be in the city of St. Cloud. That is not a
The jail itself would not have to be, but again, it would be practically and operationally a bad decision.
We also have
have to
an
be in the county
issue,
seat.
and then there's a question about public safety in terms of transport, particularly with the city of St. Cloud or the immediate area. Commissioner Notch.
But there would be enough land available outside of the downtown if had to be.
There are certainly places that we looked at 10 years ago when we did the study at that point, and so again, when the consultant comes in to talk about moving to a different location, we'll be able to answer some of those questions.
And that's all being looked at right now to bring back to the board. Commissioner
We've actually looked at one of the sites that were looked at back then, but it's really a generic look, so that we're costing out what it would be if we just chose a greenfield. So even if for some reason you said go build it, way outside the city, I mean, the analysis would be the same.
There's pros and cons. And just hold on a second, Commissioner Mergen, at this point, because I know Commissioner Mergen was still asking some other questions. Commissioner Persky?
I'm on the jail.
Okay, good.
And Mike, I maybe mentioned that before, is, we have an issue with high security jail, and also those people that are requiring legal services and court services and things like that. But also, what about maybe some people we're just holding, low maintenance people? Is it a possibility to have a lower maintenance jail for those people that are, not that, what do I want to say, needy or just serving time? I mean, is that a possibility?
Mike, do you want to speak quickly on that point about the NIC work that's happening too? Because that might help you.
Yeah, Stearns County has done a lot to keep people from being incarcerated that can be treated some other way. And those efforts will continue. And as we've progressed through this study, we had a mental health expert take a look at all our processes and procedures in that regard. And we haven't kind of seen the report, but verbally they said, you're really doing pretty much everything you possibly can. But alongside that, we want to make sure of that. And so that's why we engaged the National Institute of Corrections to come in and do an analysis of all of our processes, so that they're going to do a systems mapping, basically, of our system, our justice system. And they've just started that now. And so we're trying to do that right alongside this study, so that we only build what we absolutely need. And we're also looking at, and kind of alongside that, we'll also be looking at how we might phase in the building too, because what you saw from the consultant a couple of months ago when they reported to you was that 30 or 40 year need.
30.
And so, we should not need that right away. And so we're also looking at somehow phasing that. So I think we're doing the right things to make sure that we are not putting people in jail that need not to be.
And Commissioner Persky, are you asking about different types of housing, not just the jail? You're asking about, is there other, whether it's the lowest risk and or other housing? Is that part of what you're asking?
Correct, because I think we saw some information previously too about incarceration and also the availability for people to have a little bit more green space, open space, and that the more confined you keep them, more likelihood you're having them to come and revisit us.
And I thought you might have been asking about the other question that's been out there. One of our biggest cost shifters or cost drivers has been people for whom there isn't other housing available, like step-down facilities, et cetera, which would not have actually anything necessarily to do with that. It would be a separate kind of place. But yes, there's a variety, and part of the question is who's actually being put in our jail versus
Right.
not in our jail, green space or not. Like, we don't want to just have green space to be housing more people. We want to make sure it's for the right people.
Right.
Or the right needs, sorry. Not right.
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, the county has, since we started working with NIC back in 2003, adopted the philosophy of we jail the people we're afraid of, not just the ones we're mad at. So to get to your question on tiers, if they're less likely to be someone we're afraid of or committing different types of crime, we are doing other types of diversions or other programming to keep them out of the facility.
Right, although sometimes we run into mandatory sentencing where we have to hold them, and then, of course, that's what we're obligated to do.
Sounds like we'll get a chance to have a more in-depth conversation on this, right? Because there's lots of factors that you all are looking at, but clearly something we all really care about. Anything else on the jail piece of this? For right now, we're going to obviously need to spend a lot more time on it. Commissioner Mergen?
Is it okay to go to the packet now? Page 116, I'm struggling to get these statistics to come out. Page 116, it's got the tax rate showing there, going down, and off on the right-hand side, it's got them listed since 2015. I can't make that come out. It's got, I don't know if it's in that. What I'm seeing here is not in there, because it's got a negative 0.48% decrease, but I can't, as I look at the 0.486 and then the 48.37, I don't get a negative 0.48 when I subtract.
Mr. Schreifels?
It's not a subtraction.
All right.
Okay.
You have a
Page
slide, I think,
116, can you
somewhere.
explain to me then how that comes up? Page 0.48.
Sorry, I don't have my calculator on me, but
Well, it's a percentage difference of the previous 2 years, not the absolute difference.
But, okay.
And it wasn't that
talking a
holding, sorry, real
percentage
quick, wasn't that
decrease.
holding constant too, not impacting on what value increases were? I mean, it seems like they're two different numbers you've got on there, even though,
Well, if you go from left to right, it's got 4.76.
right.
And then the levy 4.25. That doesn't come out to 0.48 either when I subtract it.
it's not a subtraction, Commissioners. It's a division problem, I believe. Mike did that one, but
The change is, there's a percentage change from 2021 to 2022. Is that calculation? Is it, I don't think it's in error, is it?
No.
So it's the 180 million, the change from 172 million to 180 million is a change of 4.76%.
Okay.
The change from 83.8 million to 87.3 million is a 4.25%. And the change from the tax rate is 0.48 today. And with this budget, the tax rate becomes 0.483.
Okay.
And that change is 0.5% or 0.48%.
or the other way to look at it is if you divide 48.6 divided by 48.37, you get 0.0048. Oh, sorry, 4755.
Okay. I see where
So,
you're
yeah,
getting, I see where you're getting the number now, but
Okay.
I think this tax rate only went down to 0.23.
Right. Which equals 0.48%. Yeah.
Okay, that isn't how I would have calculated the tax rate change.
Yeah,
Commissioner Nutz?
page 137, I think, kind of gives you that, where the tax rate change comes in, right? Is that the same reference page as what Commissioner Mergen is talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a percentage. I mean, maybe confusing because you think about the tax rate as a percentage anyway, right? Is that?
Well, as you look at the change, I was thinking it was how much it dropped, not a percent of how much it dropped, is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
percent.
All right, that's not clearly defined in there. I have no way of figuring that out as to how they came up with it. I didn't think of that
Do you
division.
want to say that again? Because I think you just went through that. Maybe it was you, Mr. Hammes?
Taking the 48.6 of 2021, dividing it by the new rate of 48.37 gives you a decrease of 0.48%.
And then the year before, it was clearly a bigger jump.
But the amount of the tax rate drop is
Small.
0.23.
Yeah, the number you see here is actually the tax rate. So
Right.
when
Okay.
the
wanted
the
to know
number
where
that you're looking
I
at
just
there
wanted to
is
know
a
where the number
percentage
came from.
change. And
So
I'm glad.
perhaps for the
I'm
next
glad-
version of the public materials, there's a way to help clarify that, so when somebody's glancing.
Yeah, there's a lot of numbers. It's very hard to understand all the numbers, but I think looking at the tax rate is a very good thing to do because we're operating below the growth level of the county, right? So we're a growing county, of course, things are increasing, and we're taxing people less than that growth.
You know, and on that same line, increase in your property values does not put food on the table. It just doesn't. So this tax rate thing, just what you have here, the residential, $100,000 home up to 105, the county increases on that $27, and that's a pretty, pretty low interest loan right there, and home value, I mean. And the other thing to keep in mind, this is only the county portion of their tax increase. But the other two items have, plus whatever those miscellaneous ones there are. And that's over a 7% increase in that one. And then you even said, as it's going to be more than that as their credit drops off, that homestead credit. This is really a big increase for those people. I always consider that a sleight of hand type thing when you talk about tax increases and your rate. For instance, if you've got home valued at $100 and you got $10 in taxes, now next year your home value is $200 and you pay $15, your tax rate went down, but your property tax went up 50%. And that's what's happening here. Another question along those same
Just
lines.
really quickly, Commissioner Morgan, I realize I should have done this first because I know you have a bunch and I know you're on a roll, but I also want to make sure that we're going around. So I'm wondering if other people have questions at this point or comments, and then we can come back to yours, just so we make sure that we're letting everybody have the questions while it might still be in their brains.
If I could just.
Yes, do you want to respond to that?
Briefly respond. And everything you said is about that. I mean, the numbers you understand. I take a little exception that it's sleight of hand. We put this all in front of you so you understand the impact on all the properties. In addition to showing what the tax rate does, because a lot of people are concerned about that, but that's why we put the table in here, so you understand the full impact. There's no sleight of hand here. We're trying to be completely
I'm not saying
transparent.
you're trying to be devious, but I mean, that's just what happens when you talk about the tax rate went down, your dollar amount went up still.
And we also were very clear in here that what the new construction and decertified TIFs, what that amount is, so you know what the real growth is as opposed to the inflation in property value.
Commissioner Morgan.
Talking about new construction, what additional revenues are those bringing in this year? The new construction.
It's $1.2 million.
1.2 million.
1.239
million.
And then the decertification of TIF districts that are not on there is 142 million.
Which would be new construction.
142,000, excuse me, 142,000.
So that would be almost 1.5% of.
So the total dollar amount of new construction in the TIF is, when they get that.
How I would say it is that new construction and decertified TIF districts would support a 1.5% increase in the levy. Does that make sense?
And yeah, it's probably a little bit over that, but the TIF and the new construction would be 1,380,000, almost 382,000. 1,382,000.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Notch, did I see your hand?
Like you said, is it safe to say, or maybe what you have on packet page 117 with the residential agriculture, and you have the 5.5% increase or the 3.7, that's kind of off of what you're seeing took place this year?
Mr. Schreifels.
If you could restate the question, I didn't.
See your 5.5% average increase, is that kind of what you're projecting? Or is that just an estimation?
That's an estimation. That's an average countywide.
That's what you're seeing
Yes.
take place.
Yeah.
So this is kind of,
Not every property would have a 5.
right, but most of them, on average, this is what we'd see.
Yes.
Right, but the housing market is booming the
Oh,
last couple of
definitely.
years, and so these
Definitely.
increases are being seen out there. And so,
Right.
again, we're just reflecting what the market
Correct.
is doing.
Because people are paying more than,
So you're correct, Steve. Most people won't see exactly 5.5. It'll be lower or higher. Yep.
yep.
Okay, other questions or comments? Did you have one, Commissioner Persky?
Commissioner Morgan, did you have some more? Did you want to?
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm looking through my notes here. And I
Okay,
got-
then
Go
I'll
ahead,
just
while
I'll-
you're looking
I'll go to
through.
a quick one, page 125 or page 7 on the handout. It's on the budget expenses. Just under human services, I see that they had requested $60,780,000, but then the recommended is the $61,185. And I know there was the increase of the $70,000 of money coming from their budget, which we had seen earlier. But do we need to have the additional there as well? I mean, it's $400,000.
Yes, we do.
Mr. Harris.
That is just us moving, the Budget Committee moving money around between the general fund, where it was originally requested, to the appropriate funds. So it was money that would have, it was,
It
as we
would have
did our
come out of the
request.
general fund, but now it's going to come out of human
Yes.
services. All right.
Yeah, it was actually set aside for what we end up with negotiations. Obviously, some of that will be in human services.
It's just that when they request, they don't oftentimes see us giving them more than they request.
I'm glad you saw that.
Yes, yes. Commissioner Morgan, did you find?
Oh, yeah. Something else is, I was going to do this last time on issues by commissioners, but their budget being cut to the bone, right? And so additional expenses and salaries, as much as can be, should be included in that. And to me, that includes commissioner salaries. You don't vote on additional commissioner salaries or anybody else's salaries. You know, I realize there's unions involved after the budget has been set. So I think commissioner salaries need to be voted on before we start setting a budget. They don't come after December and then say, okay, now we want an increase when the budget's been cut to the bone.
Commissioner Morgan, I think, we can set those commissioners' salaries during the budget process. I don't know why we can do that. Does law say we have to do it in December, or does law say we just do it before the?
The law says it has to be done before the end of the year.
Okay.
So all counties across the state typically do it the last 2 board meetings of the year, just because it's something they take care of at the end of the year's term. In terms of the money for the commissioner's budget, typically if the commissioners do give themselves an increase, I just move money from the county contingency, which is a line item that's already in existence, and move that over to your salary lines. So there's no net gain or loss on the budget.
So it doesn't impact
No,
what the
it does
proposed
not
budget
impact
is.
anything, no.
I still feel that should be taken care of before budgets are voted on.
Well, so that would mean you need to do it in September then. Because once you approve the budget in September, you can't go up. So the big picture is the commissioner's salary is not a big number in the budget, right? It's
Oh,
a
I
very
understand
small.
that. That's not the point.
Yeah. So the budget, certainly a plan of how we're going to spend. Are we going to hit this number exactly? No. If we're within the amount of the commissioner budget being off, that would be a great victory for us. So the commissioner budget, although it's an important number, it doesn't affect the budget all that much.
And does this normally occur after negotiations are settled so that we know what the different bargaining units?
Well,
I don't know if
typically,
that matters, but.
I wouldn't say there's a direct correlation. I would say that some years we have our negotiations wrapped up before December. Some years it stretches out until March or so. It depends on the year. Again, statutorily, we have to do yours before the end of the year, and so it's always been December, as with all of our other counties, so we can do comps.
This is something
If the board wishes to change that, I guess that would be the board's call.
This is something that I had brought up in our meeting that we had earlier in the year, a month or two ago, I can't remember.
Okay.
And at that point, you told me that you thought it was
Yeah,
a good idea.
I don't have any problem whenever the board would want to do that.
To me, that should have been on these,
Okay.
at least as a discussion point.
So, good, that was brought up. Other questions, comments, thoughts? Do you have more questions?
Can't find any right now.
Okay, well, the good news
My
is we
page
still
has
have time
gotten
in
a
this
little messy.
process, and I know you all are really good at answering our questions, and there's some times when we're talking to you individually that sparks something that we should make sure that we're putting out for the public to see. Commissioner Lensmeyer, Notch, Persky, any other questions or comments at this point?
Well, this is our first cut at the apple. There'll be more discussions going on. When do we have, what's the deadline for adopting preliminary budget?
Your next meeting.
Next meeting? Okay. And then from that point, we can go down, but can't go up.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
all righty. Should
And-
be straightforward.
So the
But
item.
we'll be beating on this for a while.
Yes. So for today, our action was to receive it. We don't need to do anything else that we've
No.
done?
No action necessary.
No.
Okay.
But we wanted feedback, and that's what we've done.
Absolutely. And if we've got more questions, we should be raising them. Commissioner Mergen.
I do have one more comment on the outside agencies. Every year this bothers me, some of them that are on there. And again, I see nothing on here dealing with anything with veterans, any contributions to them, the wounded warriors, disabled American veterans, American Legion, any of those. None of them are included on here. Now, when the county brings a stray animal to what's it?
Humane Society.
Humane Society. Do you pay to have them take that animal?
The county does have a contract with the sheriff's office for services for animal control. Yes.
So they get paid for every animal that
I
comes in there from
believe
the
so,
county?
yes.
Okay, so then, are they still on the outside agencies?
They are there at, I think it's 3,600 for the year.
But we've already paid for that.
I would have to check to see if this is for additional services. I don't have that off the top of my head.
I actually had a question about where that contract was, and is this amount still then needed on this list, given the contract or not? So it's a question.
I can check and
It's
find out and bring
not
that
to say
back.
they don't provide a valuable service, just like many other nonprofits, but if it's taken care of in the contract, does it need to be here as well?
That's my comment on that.
Okay.
I think I'm done.
All right. Good. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for all this work. Thank you to the Budget Committee. This is a lot of work helping us be able to understand it and the broader public as well. We are on issues by commissioners, unless there was something else, Mike, on administration? Okay. No. Issues by commissioner. Commissioner Persky.
Just a couple of quick things. I'd like to thank staff on working on the budget. I know it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, but I appreciate all those efforts. And again, squeezing it as tight as we can I think is always important. We have that obligation to the public. Just public announcement. We know schools are open today, so people need to drive safe. And one other thing, Ben, before you leave, is that picnic tomorrow for the commissioners. So I don't know, what's the invitation, Ben?
We'll eat at 5:30, and then we'll take a brief tour of Lake Coronas Regional Park, and then mostly the campground and shower facility that we have grant funding to help pay for. And then we'll have our park commission meeting about 6:45-ish down there as well.
All right. That's all I got.
I had a feeling you might want to make sure that got announced. So, yes, hopefully we're all able to come for at least part of that. Commissioner Lensmar.
Nothing.
Mr. Bergen.
Nothing.
Okay. Commissioner Knott.
I just wanted to maybe put out a public service announcement. So there's a farm safety meeting going to be held Saturday at the Albany Area High School. It starts at 8:15. And what it is there's 9 local fire departments are going to put on demonstrations. And it's going to be from grain bin rescue, PTO entanglements, pinned under equipment, and the lifelink, helicopter, how that all works. So just making it known that the public is invited. 8:30 to 10 is the demonstrations. 10 o'clock till noon, there's going to be a presentation by experts on various aspects of farm safety. So if anybody would like to attend, there's lunch from noon to 1.
Great. Does that happen to be on, do we have that on our calendar anywhere? I wonder. I don't think Janet's
Maybe we want to give that to Janet.
Yeah, let's make sure it goes so that, because that's a great way to get that out there.
And then the only other thing I had is Monday, our county extension committee meets, and we actually do our fall tour. So we're going to be touring the Noah and Sarah Van Beck goat farm north of Freeport, and then also the Frericks' dairy farm, which is north of Melrose. And then we have our quarterly extension committee meeting. So we'll be doing that tour, and I think all the commissioners got an invite to the tour part of it. I know, Joe, you were out at Fergus's for a meeting.
It is a nice one. Yeah, that's
So yeah, that's all I had.
Wonderful. I don't think I have anything additional. You covered everything I had, and with that, our meeting is adjourned. Now we'll go to
Oh, upstairs?